Oh, he's going to Saint-Jean Cap Ferrat. Oh, that's beautiful. I was just there recently. It's a good place to
Oh
go.
wow! Oh, that's neat. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great place. Well, actually, I should say hello to everyone because it's really, I don't like it when you watch a hangout and everyone's just chatting and you're like, well, what's happening? Hi, everyone. Welcome to Think and Grow Rich Daily Hangout. My name's Sandy Leveque. I'm coming to you from France for one of the last times, moving to Portugal this weekend. I'm here with Glenn Walker in Tennessee, in America, and Benjamin in Paris, who has to be muted though, so we'll just get to sort of I can read out any comments that you make on the chat or the Q&A. So if you're watching and you want to actually be in the Hangout and you can't get in, please just let me know on Facebook. I've made it a bit clearer, so hopefully people should be able to get in. So we're reading from Your Right to Riches, the lectures that Napoleon Hill did after publishing Think and Grow Rich. So it's really interesting because he talks about the principles from the book, but he's also adding in what happened after he published it, and also the story of how he published it, which has been really interesting, I personally think. Glenn, would you be up for reading, or I can read? I don't mind.
Well, why did you read, Sandy? I'm a little bit bleary. I believe it or not, I slept in till my alarm went off this morning. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, really? Okay. I love that sleeping in for you is like probably till what, 4:30?
Yeah, 3:30. Yeah, pretty good.
3:30. Okay. And I've also got the Q&A working, so if people want to leave us any comments, you can do that there. Okay, so I'm going to screen share. And the PDFs that we read from are all in our Facebook group, so you can download these. They're free. They're in the file section. So basically what we've been reading about with this lecture is like becoming like obsessional about the thing that you would like to do and create, and also having self-awareness, like looking at how you are in the world and kind of having open eyes because sometimes people don't really see things about themselves very clearly. And so Napoleon's basically saying you need to actually have self-awareness so that you can fix things or improve things. We talked a lot about that yesterday. So, okay, so here we go. So we're on page 20. Oh, I think it's going to be a really short reading because we've almost finished the book. But that's okay. So, next, what is the most important form of self-discipline which should be exercised by all who aspire to outstanding success? Audience gives various answers. Napoleon, the control of your thoughts, the control of your mind. As a matter of fact, there's nothing else of importance in the world, is there? If you control your own mind, you control everything that you come into contact with. You really will. You'll never be the master of circumstances, and you'll never be the master of the space you occupy in the world until you first learn to be the master of your own mind. You never will. Mr. Gandhi, in buying his time to gain freedom of India, used these 5 principles. First, definiteness of purpose. He knew what he wanted. Second, he applied faith. He began to do something about it by talking to his fellow people, indoctrinating them with the same desire. He didn't do anything vicious or commit any acts of mayhem or murder. Third, by going the extra mile, and fourth, by forming a mastermind, the like of which this world has never seen before, at least 200 million of his fellow people, all contributing to that mastermind alliance, the main object being to free themselves from India without violence. And fifth, self-discipline on a scale without parallel in modern times. These are the elements that made Mahatma Gandhi the master of the great British Empire. Self-discipline. Where in the world would you find a man that would stand all of the things that Gandhi stood? All the insults, all the incarcerations that he went through while standing his ground, and yet not striking back. He struck back on his own ground with his own weapons. If you have to go to battle with somebody, select your own battleground, select your own weapons. Then if you don't win, it's your own fault. To put yourself across or remove opposition, you have to be smarter than your opposition or your enemies, and the way to do that is not to strike back on battlegrounds with weapons of their choice, but to select your own battleground and your own weapons. The time will come when this will mean something to you, when you've got a problem to solve. Somebody is opposing you. You've got to go around somebody. Then you'll think of this selection. Choose your own battleground and choose your own weapons. Condition yourself first for the battle. Make up your mind that you're not under any circumstances going to try and destroy anybody or try to do anything that could injure anybody other than defending your own rights. Don't care who your adversary is, how strong he is, or how smart they are. If you use those tactics, you're bound to win. Create a system whereby you take full possession of your own mind and keep it occupied with all the things, circumstances, and desires of your choice, and strictly off the things you do not want. How do you go about keeping your mind off the things you don't want? Audience gives various answers. Napoleon, why of course, that's an elementary question, and I didn't mean to insult your intelligence by asking it. I only wanted to emphasize it by having you tell me. Napoleon wasn't blessed with anything you don't have, and maybe not half as much as some of you have. His background was certainly much more difficult than that of most people. If Napoleon made the grade, then you can make it too. You have to take possession. You have to be in charge of your institution of enterprise. You are an institution of enterprise. You've got to call the shots and see that they're carried out. You have to have self-discipline with which to do it. That's how you go about keeping your mind off the things you don't want, by occupying your mind and seeing in your imagination the things that you do want, even though you don't physically have possession of them. You can always have mental possession of them. Unless you have mental possession of the things first, you'll never have physical possession of them, unless somebody wishes it upon you, or it falls on you on top of the house as you're walking by accidentally. Anything that you get or acquire by desire must be created in your mental attitude first. You must be very sure about it there. You must see yourself in possession of it, and that takes self-discipline. Your reward for doing this is mastery of your own destiny through guidance of infinite intelligence. Isn't that a marvelous thing? A reward for doing this. For doing what? Audience member. Controlling yourself. Napoleon replied, while taking possession of your own mind, it gives you direct contact with infinite intelligence. No doubt in the world about it. When Napoleon said that there's a person standing looking over his shoulder and guiding him, he was particularly telling the truth when he met with obstacles. All he had to do was remember that he was right there. If he ever came to an intersection in life and didn't know which way to turn, all he had to do was remember that invisible force is there overlooking his shoulder, and he always pointed the right direction if Napoleon paid attention to him, and had faith in him. How could Napoleon make a statement like that and know that it's true? Only one way, and that's by having practiced it. That's the only way he would know. The penalty for not taking possession of your own mind, which is the penalty that the majority of people pay all the way through their life, is this. You will become a victim of the stray winds of circumstance, which will remain forever beyond your control. And what are the stray winds of circumstance? Audience gives various answers. You'll become the victim of every influence that you come into contact with, enemies and everything else alike. All these things that you don't want will sway you like a leaf on the bosom of a wind, unless you take possession of your own mind. That's the penalty that you must pay. Isn't it a strange thing to contemplate? Isn't it a profound thing to recognize the truth that you've been given a means by which you can declare and determine your earthly destiny? Along with that comes a tremendous penalty that you must pay if you don't embrace that asset and use it. Along with it also comes this tremendous asset or reward that you do receive automatically if you accept that asset and use it. If Napoleon didn't have any other evidence of a first cause or a creator, if he didn't have any other evidence and what he knew about that principle, he would know that there had to be a first cause, because that's too profound for any human being to think out. Giving you a great asset and then penalizing you for not accepting it, rewarding you if you do accept it. That's the sum of substance of what happens when you use self-discipline with which to take possession of your own mind and to direct to the things you want. Never mind what you want. That's nobody's business except yours. That's nobody's business what you want, but your business. Don't forget that. Don't let anybody come along and send you the idea as to what you should want. Who was going to tell Napoleon what he wanted or what he should have wanted? Audience members, you. Napoleon, yes, you bet your life. Oh, excuse me. It hadn't always been that way, but it was as of 1954. There wasn't anybody who told him what he should have wanted. Napoleon did that. If anybody else were to tell him, he would have thought that was an insult to his creator because he invented it, and Napoleon should have the last word about himself. Napoleon would never, under any circumstances, do anything to injure anybody or anything. Whatever you do to or for another person, you do to or for yourself. It's an eternal law. Nobody can avoid or evade that law. That's why Napoleon wouldn't be a prosecuting attorney. That's why he was so proud he didn't follow his inclination and become a lawyer. Napoleon had a long visit with his brother, Vivian. He was a lawyer who specialized in divorce suits, especially divorce suits of very wealthy people. Vivian got so much of that he came to the conclusion all women were bad, and he never married. He never had the pleasure of a wife like Napoleon did, because he thought that all women were bad because he judged them by the ones he knew best, which is a common trait of all of us. We judge people by the ones we know best, don't we? It's not always fair to do that either. Certainly not in his case. You need to understand people and understand how to adjust yourself with people that are difficult to get along with. You need to know that because there are a lot of people in this world that are difficult to get along with. We can't do away with those people who are difficult to get along with, but we can do something about it by doing something with ourselves. And that's the end of those lecture notes, which we have thanks to Andy Houseman. So, okay. I actually just wanted to show you everyone something that I saw on Facebook just before we start chatting about it, because I'll forget otherwise. I'm just going to show you. It's actually the chief aim of Bruce Lee, because I found out yesterday that Bruce Lee used Think and Grow Rich, and it's so fascinating. I don't know. I think I have my sound turned off. Oh no. I'll just screen share quickly and show you guys what I'm talking about. In Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon talks about having a chief definite aim in life, and you read it and like read it to yourself every day. And a really good friend of mine posted this yesterday. Hopefully you can see. Glenn, can you see my Facebook page? Okay.
Yeah, I can see it just page down just a little bit. I can see the written statement there, right?
Okay, cool. I'll just read it out because.
Oh yeah, okay, that'd be great.
So this is Bruce Lee's written statement of his definite chief aim, a clear vision of who he will be, what he will give in return for it, and how much money he will have in his possession for doing it, and by when. I've got to assume he read it day and night like Napoleon Hill said to do. I recently saw Paul Hutchings on stage firing his definite chief aim off from memory over and over, and I realized the commitment and the integrity that needs to be brought to this exercise. I'm taking this seriously. Thanks, Paul and Bruce, and to God for this gift to choose who we will be in this life and what we will do to achieve it. So then, the cool thing is, and this comes back to actually what Napoleon's saying about who you surround yourself by. So this is I actually mastermind with this guy and his wife every week. And then the discussion was really interesting because there's like so many of us that are like in this sort of frame of mind. The first comment is from this guy that I follow on the internet. He says, "That's awesome. I listen to a manifesto in my sleep every night with my chief aim in it." This guy is a six-figure earner on the internet. He says he actually got it from Justin Berengia, who's a seven-figure guy. And he said, Bruce Lee's was a little hard for me to read, so I looked it up on Google. It says, I, Bruce Lee, will be the first highest paid Oriental superstar in the United States. In return, I will give the most exciting performances and render the best of quality in capacity of an actor. Starting 1970, I will achieve world fame, and from then onward until the end of 1980, I will have in my possession $10 million. I will live the way I please and achieve inner harmony and happiness. Yeah, and then Paul Hutchings, who's the guy who actually started the telecall which inspired me to do these hangouts, he says, "Awesome. I believe Napoleon Hill would never have written so extensively about this 25 years to a whole life of research unless it's very sound. After testing it myself with commitment for 4 years now, I'm a believer." Paul Hutchings is on his way to $500,000 with what he does on the internet. So, you know, he was living in a trailer when he started becoming a student of this book. So I just wanted to share that with you because I thought it was so inspiring and interesting to know that Bruce Lee had used the same principles, because I had no idea.
Yeah, so 1970, right? You know, back
Yeah.
44 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know much about Bruce Lee. I know that he did become a superstar, but I'd love to know if the dates match up. Like if it, I don't think it actually really matters. It's like we don't have to choose. We can't predict all of it. You know, like
No.
the universal God or infinite intelligence that has its own timing. But it would be cool to see like when he became a star.
But I thought out of today's reading too, you know, mind control, right? Very important, controlling your mind.
Yeah.
And otherwise, you'll be, you know, he said like a leaf floating in the wind. But I've always thought it's like being flotsam and jetsam in the sea of life. You know, in other words, just being thrown
Yeah.
around. If you don't control your mind and your purpose and do written statement and you know,
Yeah.
be directed right where you're going, you know, where you want to really be, you know, and then
Yeah.
putting your finding your strengths, playing to your strengths, pushing down your weaknesses, staying away from what you don't want, going for what you want, right? I mean, you know, it was a pretty good summary there actually. And then the Gandhi example, I think, was very good too.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and actually Ben's saying in the chat that Bruce Lee was kind of stopped in his ascension, like as he became famous, but he was born to become famous. I'm going to go and research Bruce Lee now because I don't know much about him and I'm intrigued now.
Yeah,
So
fairly young, you know, and I've forgotten why, but
he died. He died young.
young, yeah, fairly young.
Oh, okay. Okay. But he definitely became famous before he died, didn't he? Because
Yeah.
so many people talk about him. Yeah. I was at a
Oh,
conference
yeah.
last month, and one of those guys I mentioned in the thread, he showed us a clip of Bruce Lee in a film. It was really cool. um, yeah. So mind control and also I think like the people you surround yourself with, and what he said at the end, um, you can't completely exclude people that are difficult to get along with, but you can change how you react. I've had a personal example of that recently I can share, unless there's something else you want to share right now again.
No, no, go ahead. I'd like to hear your example. Because,
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, basically, I'm staying with like two friends, and I was supposed to go about a week ago, but we got delayed and had to stay an extra 2 weeks. And it's just really interesting because one of the people I'm staying with is kind of an example of someone who doesn't is not really interested in stuff like this, and watches the news and sort of I can really recognize myself because I used to be like that. Oh, and that's the phone going. That's funny. That's probably their phone going, saying hello. Yes, but like this person is very kind and has a really good heart and generous. But I can just see how they've become a kind of a product of the dominant way of thinking. You know, when you watch the news and you only see bad news, and you go out into the world and you see like bad news that kind of fits what you're watching on the news. And you never really dream. You just live getting by. And before, I would have found it quite hard to be around someone like that for a long period of time. But now, having read this book so much, and from what we're doing about Hangout, it's like you can just observe it. You don't have to be, you don't have to get angry about it or try and avoid that person, which is probably what I would have done before. I just kind of observe it, and I don't let it it's almost like watching someone who's just, you know, you know that what they're saying isn't really true, but you just kind of smile and nod, but you don't get angry or like get sucked into it. You know, it's. I think when you become aware that there's a lot of people that live like that, you don't have to like get personally annoyed with them, because I used to do that. And when I first started to do personal development, I was like trying to convince everyone that there is a different way. You can, you know, you can dream, you can change your life. And now I've realized that the best way to like to have conversations like that is for people to ask you, for them just to be like, why are you different? Why are you not like most people? You know, rather than like trying to like make them see the light, which only like gives you a really bad headache.
Well, yeah, you don't want to be perceived as a person in a cult, because that's not really what we're doing here. You know.
No.
It's really you know, you're in the 5%, not the 95%, and
Yeah.
you are going to seem strange to some people, but you know what? That's kind of okay. You know what I mean? I think it's all right, you know?
Exactly. And that's yeah. You just have to be willing to get a bit uncomfortable. And oh, Benjamin's saying that Bruce was 33 when he was killed. Oh, I really want to know why now. Like putting all these questions out there. But what else I was going to share was that, yeah, and I think I've talked about this before, but there's a great passage in a book called Illusions by Richard Bach. It's a book from the 70s, but it's such a beautiful book. I really recommend it to anyone who's interested in sort of thinking differently from how most people think. Because at the start of that book, and this just fits in so well with what we're talking about, there's a metaphor given. The book's about like these two pilots, but there's a metaphor about this riverbed and these creatures that live on a river bank, and they just like live all their lives by clinging to the river bank because they don't want to go in the river, so they're always clinging every single day. And one day, one of the river creatures says to his friends, "I'm really bored of clinging. Like, this is all we do. I want to let go and just see what happens when I go in the river." And the other creatures look at him like he's crazy and say, "Well, why the hell would you do that? You'll die. Like, you'll crash to the rocks, and the current will kill you, will take you away, and you'll die." And he says, "Well, I'm dying already. You know, if I don't do that, I'm dying anyway, because I will die of boredom."
Yeah.
And so he like. They try and talk him out of it, but he made his mind up, and he says, "You know, the current will take me, and I'm just going to trust it." So he lets go of the riverbank, like lets go and lets himself go into the river, and he does get smashed to the rocks. Like he disappears, and they can't see him, and he's being smashed and bounced around the rocks, and they're like, "Oh, we knew this was going to happen. He shouldn't have done that." But then he comes back up, like he smashes on the rocks, but then the current does take him, and he starts floating down the river, and he's fine, and he starts like flowing through the current, and he's loving it. And all the other creatures can see that from a distance, and they're like, "Oh my God, he's like this superhero, he's this messiah," and they start shouting out, like hundreds of them, for him to save them. Like they say, like, "Messiah, come and save us." And he says to them, "Well, I can't save you. You have to save yourselves. You know, I can't come in and take you off the riverbank. You have to just let go." But none of them do. And so he just has to like leave them and keep floating away. And I just sometimes, whenever I'm having a weird day, I just read that passage, and I remember that, like when you don't subscribe to the way that most people think, you're like that river creature. You're just kind of taking some risks, but you're allowing yourself to like go with the flow. The current.
I was thinking about the analogy would be, of course, Christopher Columbus was going to sail off the end of the world. Do you remember that?
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
You know, when he went, you know, in his boat, in his ships, right, to the New World. You know.
Yeah. Totally.
New World. You know. Yeah.
And if you think about it, I bet Bruce Lee, if Bruce Lee had put his chief aim on Facebook, if it was around back then, told all his friends he was going to become an American superstar and have $10 million by
Yeah.
1980. 90% of people would be like, "Man, you're crazy. You'll
Yeah.
never do that." Like, and even if they wouldn't say it to his face, they would think it.
Yeah.
But he just started doing what it was required, training and then reading this chief aim, and made it happen. Even though he was obviously killed off at a young age, but so inspiring. And the other things that he talked about before we finish up were taking possession of your mind, obviously. I love the example of his cousin or his brother that was a divorce lawyer and ended up not getting married because he hated all women. Oh,
Oh,
I
we're
think my
back.
connection died. Yeah, sorry, my connection went. I was like, oh. um, yeah, I was just saying that, people sometimes think you can do work and like separate that from everything else, but it's like it's where you spend all your time and your energy. So if you're
Yeah.
always thinking about divorce cases and the women trying to like whatever do to their former husbands, your life is going to start to reflect that. I found that with politics, like always focusing on poverty and inequality and violence against women. I didn't think the world was a very nice place to be 5 years ago because I was always reading the news. I literally woke up and started listening to the news all day, and it was my work. I had to like be in the news and get my campaign in the news. So like since I stopped doing that, my life is so different. I'm just it's amazing how what we focus on expands.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very powerful.
yeah, exactly. Cool. And what? Oh, and I also liked the breakdown he gave of Gandhi because it's like it's actually very simple what he said. That Gandhi basically had. I'm just getting back to it. He had a definiteness of purpose. He knew what he wanted, i.e., he knew what he wanted. He had applied faith, so he actually took this purpose that he had and he did something with it. He started to tell people about it, and he had faith that it would work, that he could do something about it. And then he went the extra mile, and he formed a mastermind, huge mastermind, and that was and he has self-discipline on a scale without parallel in modern times. So people think sometimes it's really complicated to become successful or to sort of go into that 2%. Actually, you start realizing that it's not really as difficult as people make out. you know, it's like I think it's like you have to become like a dog with a bone. You won't give up until you get what you want and what you see as possible.
Exactly. And Chico's a good example of that, right? Down to the bone, Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, he's a dog, so um, and he's a good example of how things can change because he grew up in a. This is my dog Chico. Um, he grew up in an abusive home, like a puppy farm that got closed down by the authorities because they had 150 dogs in one house, and so he spent the first half of his life living there, and they were beaten, they weren't fed, they weren't even given water. All the dogs were severely dehydrated and undernourished and had bruises. Like some of them had like massive injuries on them that had never been like cleaned up. So anyway, he lived there till he was 2.5. Then he went to a shelter where he was living in a concrete cage for 2.5 years. But he didn't give up, And I came along one day and took him home, and now he's like lives a life of luxury.
He's living his purpose now.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
is.
Benjamin says now he is in love. Yeah. If people could see it, it's so funny in the morning when I wake up. He jumps onto my this is really deep. He jumps onto my bed and like we like hug for like 5 minutes and then we get up. It's funny to think this is a dog that was sleeping on a concrete floor for like most of his life. So I think that can happen to all of us. In fact, I don't just think it; I know it can. So no matter who you are, where you're watching this and what you might be going through, you have to know that things can change, and this book will help you do that. So if you are feeling weird or like things are going badly, then just commit to yourself to make a change and to do whatever you feel like you're guided to do. You know, I felt guided to do these hangouts and to host this and to really become a student of this book. And the more we do that, I think the more we start to just, it's like you tune into a different vibration.
You do. You do.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Okay, well, speaking of dogs, I'm going to go and walk him now. So,
Okay.
um, great to have you on, guys.
Have a great day, huh? You know,
Thank you, and great to have you on for the first time, Ben, even if we can't hear you.
hi, Benjamin.
It's okay because like I can just relay what you say in the chat or the Q&A. So so actually tomorrow we'll be reading from the book again. So back to the book. Um, so that's it.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'll follow you. You know, after
Yeah,
it's
after the live event.
I'll be
Yeah.
fine. You know.
Yeah, we have. I was talking to a new friend from YouTube actually, who's in Australia. Lauren, if you're watching this, hello. Who might be coming on because it's earlier her time, so that's okay. We'll find them. Oh, and Monday and Tuesday there won't be a hangout because I'm going to be arriving in Lisbon in Portugal. But that tomorrow we'll be here. So have a great day, everyone. Go
Okay, bye.
out and just live the Napoleon Hill philosophy that whatever the mind can achieve, no, whatever the mind can conceive, it can achieve. Bye, everyone. Bye, Ben. Bye, Glenn.